First of all, thanks for the invitation to come and speak here. Talk a little bit about, some of the things in Montgomery County. We're actually kind of excited about where we sit from a fiscal perspective. We ended our fiscal year really healthy. We not only achieved our 10% goals for reserves, but we went well above it. And we got more good news at the year-end closeout, and when that becomes official, you're going to see that the county is actually in a pretty healthy place. While there were downturns in parts of the economy, nobody's going to pretend there's not a problem in the commercial sector with occupancy. At the same time, we still have construction going on in the county. One segment of the economy, at least around life sciences, is actually doing fairly well, and there's demand for some other space. And you're beginning to see conversions of buildings from one use to another use. So we think that we're not taking some of the hits that other jurisdictions have taken. And one of the most important things is because this county has a diverse tax base. We have both income taxes and property taxes. We're avoiding some of what's happening, particularly in Northern Virginia, where they don't have an income tax, so they're solely dependent on property tax. So imagine what happens when the commercial market starts sinking in a jurisdiction like that. If those are the only taxes you have, they're going to be taking large hits on what they're able to do. So even some of the Northern Virginia counties are talking about adding income taxes to their tax mix. I hope they do, because we're already lower taxed than they are. And so if they have to add additional taxes, that would be a nice competitive thing for us. So I think we stand in a pretty strong place. When I came in here, one of the first things that I wanted to do was break the old Boyd network in Montgomery County. Everybody knows that's the real thing. And I was bothered by the lack of diversity in contracting, and I was bothered by the stories I heard from people about their experiences in contracting, trying to get contracts in the county. And I can read as well as everybody else can, and it was obvious the county had a system that was far less open than it needed to be. And it was very difficult to deal with our contracting process. If you dealt with some of our bid documents, there were a lot of people who said, your bid documents are so expensive, it's so hard to deal with because we have to hire lawyers and accountants to figure out how we're going to do it. The contracts aren't big enough to justify the expenses we're spending to put in a bid in the county. And so people weren't even bothering to bid sometimes because they said this is not something we can afford to do. I came in and in my last term on the council, Sidney Katz and I kind of made an agreement. Sidney agreed to vote for the minimum wage. I agreed that we would go out and listen to the business community and make changes in how we do our procurement and how we do our business practices. And we did a listening tour. We went around the county. We only met with businesses. We did, I think, 6 or 7 meetings. And we told people to tell us why we're bad. And my department heads went to all of these meetings. We wanted people to feel free to tell us what problems they were running into and how we could fix them. And I don't know if Ash is here today. But if he's not here, Ash Shetty's our procurement director, and he made major changes in the way we do contracting and the way we reach out. We now have a totally transparent system. You can go online and see what's out for bid. You can see where the bid processes are. All the things that have been kind of mysterious, we've kind of opened up. We've opened up the number of people who can bid on contracts. If you're in the MCATs, LCATs world, they had limited it to 8 people. New people, when those things reopened again, new people didn't try to get into the queue because they knew that we were just going to give the contracts to the same 8 people who had it last time. So we increased the number of contracts we let out, and the result was we were so overwhelmed with people who wanted to bid on the contracts that it took us longer to process the contracts than it had ever taken us before. So we weren't even able to get through that work pile in the time we had thought we were going to be able to get through the work pile. That was one of those things where it was a good thing that it was slower because it brought more people into the ability to do contracts with the county. We've put money and time into minority procurement, and we are worried about the Supreme Court. You know, I think all of us know that, you know, the intentionality that goes into minority procurement is being targeted by the Supreme Court. There are people who would like us to have to dissolve all those things, and we do not want to do that. And, you know, we in fact are working in the opposite direction. How do we make our contracting more inclusive, not less inclusive? Last year, we spent $246 million with minority women and disabled-owned businesses. In Montgomery County, we added a veterans preference to who we do business with, so we can, you know, even broaden the number of people who can take advantage of it. And for the first time ever, more new people got contracts. There were more first-time vendors in Montgomery County than ever before. They became the majority of vendors were first-time vendors. And that means there was a real sea change in terms of who is getting contracts here. And hopefully some of you have benefited from that. I'm a big believer that the ability to spread out contracting in the community is really important. There are systemic issues why some people and some groups historically don't participate at the same rate. And if we don't address them as systemic issues, if we just hope this problem is going to go away, it's not going to go away by itself. So we have to be deliberate about choices we make and how we do our contracting, who's invited to the contracting party, and what opportunities everybody's going to get. So I feel like, you know, with Ash Shetty's leadership, he's done a pretty amazing job in turning that department around and opening up. I know that Nadia Klutz here, and I want to thank Nadia for the work she does there. She's a real key component of making that department work the way it's working now. And we've upped our business assistance game. When the county, again, back when I was on the council, we did this shift from, how do you put it? We were, what are the right words for this? We wanted more transparency in our processes. And we were able to do that, and we understand that people value the fact that we're more transparent. I just saw Anthony Featherstone walk in, and you know, Anthony leads up our workforce efforts. We are doubling down on providing, you know, a more talented workforce, developing a more talented workforce, and Anthony's played a key role in that. Workforce Montgomery has gone from an organization that embarrassed us to an organization that has actually demonstrated the ability to train people and get people ready for work. And I want to thank Anthony for the work he's done there and the board members who've served there, because having somebody who can provide a more talented workforce is something we all need. We're not going to raise wages and raise people's economic circumstances on minimum wage jobs alone. Minimum wage is a floor. It's not where people need to be, but it's certainly a floor that keeps you from falling off a cliff. And now we're in a position where we're actually training people to get the jobs they need, and that's important. We still look at holes in the employment, you know, in employment opportunities here. We're looking to build more employment opportunities. Montgomery College has played a big role in increasing its tech training. The college is, you know, more and more looking at providing people with certificates that they need to be in the workforce, rather than saying you can't get your certificate unless you get a degree. And decoupling certificates from degrees is a big deal in terms of bringing you a workforce you need, because a lot of people don't have the money or the time to spend 2 to 4 years getting full degrees, but they can go through certificate programs and get the skills they need to be partners with you and be employees for you. So we've tried to look at this thing as a, you know, from top to bottom, recognize our obligation to try to make your lives more prosperous and to make you feel you have more opportunities here. And I think we're doing this and we're moving in the right direction. You are always invited to talk to us. So if you run into an issue where you think something is not the way it's supposed to be, then you should come to us. You shouldn't assume that we don't want to hear the news. We can't change things that we don't know about. And so we're committed to listening and doing, not just telling you we're better, trust us. If you run into issues where you think that we can make improvements, you should let us know. The notion of continuous improvement is something that government, and I'm sure in the private sector, you need to be thinking about as well. You may be doing something right yesterday, but the world changes, and you need to be sure that what you're doing is right tomorrow and the day after that. And so I think all of us have to kind of embrace a culture of continuous change and be comfortable with some degree of continuous change. So I want to thank you all for being here. I'm going to stay around for a little while, then I will go on to more meetings as my day normally is. But I really do appreciate the opportunity to kind of open up this morning. You've been great partners, and we want to make sure that you feel like we're the best partner you can have. You are our best ambassadors. That was the other thing Sydney and I talked about, and I think we're all aware of. If you go out and tell your friends that Montgomery County is a good place to do business, people will come here. When you tell your friends that this is the worst place to do business and this is totally, everything is messed up, procurement's messed up, permitting's messed up, if that's the message you bring out to the community, then people aren't going to come here. So we want you to be our ambassadors. We want you to be able to tell stories to people that invite people to come to Montgomery County. So I hope we can continue to win your confidence, and we'll continue to do the work we need to make sure you can be successful here. So thank you very much.
Regarding the Economic Development Committee, when we formed this council back in December and I was elected to be president, the first thing I did was create a brand new committee, the Economic Development Committee. And the reason I did that was to elevate issues of importance regarding economic activity here in Montgomery County. We'd been talking about it, but we hadn't talked about it enough. And I felt it needed its own standing committee so we could talk about attracting Fortune 500 companies. We could talk about growing our small minority businesses. And yes, we could also talk about making sure that everybody has a fair wage to be able to live in Montgomery County, recognizing we want people to stay here and we welcome people from all across the world. And early on in my presidency, earlier this year, I created a roadmap for economic development, looking at the policies, our procurement, our regulations, to see how we can streamline processes, make things easier to build and to do work. And so I tasked our Office of Legislative Oversight with diving into these details. We received a report over the summer. It is public. I'm happy to share it with anyone if you want to email me, but we will be having more conversations about this at the Economic Development Committee because I know that many of you are frustrated. I know that there's more we can do in the county to make your jobs easier. And so we have to identify where those choke points are. We need to identify how we can modernize our processes. And that's what I and a number of my colleagues have been committed to doing as well. There are other challenges on the horizon, particularly those within our commercial real estate sector. Just this week, the chair of the Economic Development Committee and we had a committee hearing with developers, with real estate brokers, and with the planning department to take a look at our real estate sector, and particularly our commercial sector, to figure out how we can get ahead of what we know is coming not only locally but nationally. With more people working from home, the federal government no longer signing leases for office spaces, or at least consolidating the space that they are renting or leasing. So we're trying to get ahead of that. And here in Montgomery County, there are approximately 15,000 office buildings of various sizes. And they account for about 75 million square feet. And so we know about vacancy rates. And as the county executive noted, our vacancy rate is pretty good with regard to the DC area. But the canary in the coal mine is not the vacancy rate. It's the utilization rate. And we know that fewer and fewer offices are actually filled on any given day. More people are working from home. And I'll share with you that the county government has signed on to a letter with the 23 jurisdictions around the DC region to ask President Biden to get more federal workers back into the office, which not only will help the commercial space, it will also help the retailers in our downtown areas. And we're not just talking about the Golden Triangle in DC, we're talking about Bethesda and Rockville and Silver Spring and other urban areas around the county, but around the region. But it will also help with transportation. You know, we want to make sure people can get to work, and so we have to figure out a way to get our metro system the funding it needs so that we can safely access jobs. And so getting more people into the office will help with that as well. As the county executive also noted, we are very mindful of the Supreme Court ruling that has struck down minority contracting programs or programs that specifically are tailored to certain ethnicities in our community. And so we here in Montgomery County want to make sure that everyone has access and everyone has equitable resources. And so we are going to be closely watching and changing any of our rules and regulations to make sure that our diverse business community has access to all of the diverse funding opportunities that we in county government want to provide. And ultimately, this is a partnership. We want to make sure that you all have the support that you need so that your employees can continue succeeding, so that you can afford to live in Montgomery County, so that your children and grandchildren will continue living in Montgomery County. So I very much appreciate the Chamber holding this event. I look forward to the conversations, and the conversations do not end here. Please reach out to me or any of my colleagues. Please tune in to the Economic Development Committee. There are a lot of important conversations taking place there, and I look forward to continuing this discussion. So thank you all and have a good morning.